Hello and welcome to the Beyond Biotech podcast number 93. I'm Jim Cornell and this is the weekly podcast from Labiotech. This week we're talking with Satellos Bioscience about Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a genetic disorder with progressive muscle degeneration and weakness due to changes in the protein dystrophin, which helps keep muscle cells intact. To tell us about the disease and what's being done to tackle it, we had a conversation with biotech veteran and Satellos CEO, Frank Gleeson. All right, so I guess to get things rolling, if you could give me a little bit of background first on the company.
Sure, Jim, I'd be delighted to do that, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience. Satellos Bioscience is a drug discovery company. We were founded in 2018. A colleague, Dr. Michael Rudnicki, and I created the company. Dr. Rudnicki is a member of the Royal Society of the UK and a leading authority globally in the field of muscle stem cells. And he and I have known each other over 20 years in the stem cell field and as collaborators. And he made what we both believed and what Nature Medicine felt was a remarkable discovery that he published back in 2015 on the nature of muscle regeneration, and in particular, how muscle regeneration is diminished in a disease called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And we felt this might provide clues to a new treatment approach for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So after a couple of years of socializing the idea and generating some interest, we founded the company in 2018.
Turning to the disease itself, I wonder if you could give us a bit of background on Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Sure. And what it is, how it's diagnosed, what the rates are like.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a disease that is genetic in nature. The mutated gene is called dystrophin. It's carried on the X chromosome and generally affects boys. The gene is passed from mothers to sons. Boys only have one copy of the X chromosome, so if a mutated variant of the gene is on that chromosome, they will get Duchenne muscular dystrophy 100% of the time. So a mother that's a carrier, of course, then has a 50-50 chance of passing that on to her boy. Very, very, very rarely does it affect females, but it can affect females as well. But the prevailing statistics are 1 in 5,000 male births worldwide will be born with muscular dystrophy. Sadly, this is not the gene condition that can be detected beforehand in any industrializable way, I guess you could say. And so it's generally observed in most countries around the world by observation. So behavioral observation of the young child at around the ages of 3 to 5, when the child presents as having difficulties with mobility, with gait, balance, and so forth. And generally speaking, it is diagnosed, while it can be diagnosed younger and sometimes older, it's generally diagnosed in this 5 to 7 age group. And the recommended standard of care at that time, pretty much everywhere, is to recommend that the child begin a course of corticosteroid treatment, which in many countries is known as prednisone. Then this becomes a lifelong therapy for these children. So that's a bit of a backgrounder on Duchenne. And I should point out perhaps the obvious, but it may not be obvious to your audience, that this is a disease that progressively destroys skeletal muscle. In males, skeletal muscle makes up 40% of our body mass, and it is the muscle and the organ that's responsible for our ability to have posture and have strength. And as it degenerates and disappears over life, these children will ultimately pass away from usually complications of respiratory failure or heart failure, and often in their mid to late 20s.
What are the challenges in treating and developing treatments for Duchenne muscular dystrophy?
The largest challenge truly is that muscle disappears. So this becomes the biggest single challenge, we believe, in altering the long-term course of this disease. So there are newer approaches which are gaining approval by regulatory bodies that are attempting to restore a portion of the gene to skeletal muscle fibers in the hopes that that will stabilize the fibers and stabilize the disease. Of course, this is a challenge when muscle is disappearing on an ongoing, constant, progressive basis. So we have identified another approach to directly address this issue of muscle degeneration and the muscle breakdown. And that's what we believe represents the next horizon in trying to help these children and adolescents and young adults that are living with Duchenne.
What kind of new treatments are being considered, and do these new treatments rely on treating extremely early?
Embedded in there are some really excellent questions. So you've hit an issue that we would say to ourselves in Satellos is really the nub issue. So muscle is actually breaking down. So the muscle itself breaks down, the fiber breaks down, and the body is unable, in these children we discovered, to properly regenerate new muscle tissue. And muscle is meant to be a regenerative organ. So in fact, it is arguably the most regenerative organ in the human body, and it's the largest organ in the human body. So if it's not able to repair and recover damage and create new muscle cells, then what will happen over time is that scar tissue, fibrotic tissue, fatty tissue will infiltrate and will actually move into muscle and displace muscle. And this happens continuously throughout the lives of these young individuals that live with Duchenne. So we discovered, we believe, why this is happening, which in fact is the basis of a Nature Medicine paper in 2015 by Dr. Rudnicki, and the entire basis for us wanting to create Satellos and move forward. Dr. Rudnicki discovered in this genetic condition, the missing protein as a result of the gene mutation, which is also called dystrophin. So the dystrophin gene, the dystrophin protein, plays a role in regeneration, a role that was not previously known and certainly not understood. And the role it plays is to direct the process of cell division in muscle stem cells that allow new muscle cells to be created. So when it's not there, new muscle cells are not being created with anywhere near the efficiency that is needed to keep up with the disease or get ahead of the disease. So we're zeroing in directly on this role, which is called a signaling role. So the jargon in the scientific world is signal transduction. It is a molecule that plays a signaling role that gives a signal within the stem cell to tell it how to divide. And in this case, it divides to create self and non-self. So one stem cell stays behind and one muscle cell is created. So it's massively elegant. It's a beautiful piece of biology. And this is what we have basically first discovered, then we've elucidated. And now what we've done is found alternate ways to prompt that signal within the muscle stem cell environment. So essentially, we're kind of tricking the cell in a way into thinking dystrophin is still there when it's not. And so it will now divide, we believe, and we have shown in our preclinical data, it will divide to create new muscle cells, which is what the body needs.
Can you tell me a bit about the product that you've developed and how you developed it?
This was, years of work, a labor of love, I guess you could say, by our scientific team, and a very, very concentrated effort focused on trying to uncover other signaling approaches. So basically, proteins exist and work in biochemical networks that interact with one another and create biochemical signals. And that's what gives us all of our properties in life, ultimately. And nature, by its very nature, is full of checks and balances, both balances to make sure we don't over-signal and alternative approaches to make sure that in the case that something isn't working, there could be a redundancy built in that might provide a backup. So we discovered that in this particular situation, that is also true. We've discovered a backup system It's a vestigial system that has been conserved from lower life forms through evolution, but in this case is normally dormant in muscle stem cells. And we've identified a way, not so much to activate it, but a way to use that system in order to replace the missing signal of dystrophin. We've identified another protein, what we believe to be a very safe protein, a safe target for a drug intervention that can be drugged. So in other words, we've developed a small molecule, orally available pill that will interact very specifically with this protein target, which is known as AAK1, adaptor-associated kinase 1. And when it inhibits this particular kinase, then it replaces the missing signal in the stem cell, and the stem cell can divide and create a muscle cell, which is the whole idea, the objective.
You mentioned that approach of kind of tricking the cell to believe that it's still there. You mentioned earlier that other companies are also trying to address Duchenne. Are they taking a similar approach, or are there different approaches to doing this?
There are different approaches that are being tried in addressing this disease. And over the last 30 years, many different approaches have been attempted because it's such a devastating disease condition. And some have met with greater initial success than others and have more potential than others. What is most in the public's eye right now is the area of gene therapy. So this has been the attempt, because it's a known gene, to package portions of the gene, because it's too large to put in any one envelope. You deliver gene therapy by essentially putting a portion of a gene, or all of a gene if you could, into essentially a molecular envelope, and then delivering it into the body, targeting it or hoping it will be taken up by the organ it's supposed to get to. So we're talking about the largest organ in the human body, the largest gene in the human body. It doesn't completely fit in the envelope that we can use. And so you get some uptake of the gene product for sure. The statistics are a little on the low side still to date, but there's hope that they'll get better. But it by no means addresses all of the issues that I've described, because it's not addressing the entire skeletal framework because of the relatively low uptake, nor is it getting into the muscle stem cells themselves, because that's a different environment that requires a different approach. And so the opportunity as we see it is to stand on the shoulders of those that have built this technology platform and build on that. So we can treat patients whether they've received gene therapy or not. And we believe that we can improve, or we hope and believe that we can improve their condition in terms of their muscle and their muscle strength at all ages and stages of the disease. That's our ultimate goal.
And with your product, how is it delivered and how frequently?
So our product will be a pill, and the pill or a gel, depending, we'll formulate it to be easy to consume, depending on the specific population and their age and so on. But essentially, it will be taken by mouth. This will essentially be a daily treatment.
Is it the case that the earlier that you're able to intervene, the better the results?
That's an important question and an important consideration. And because, of course, of how I described the disease, that muscle is damaged and destroyed progressively, of course, the younger we can intervene, the more muscle is already there. So naturally, one would think that that would provide the highest possible opportunity for benefit. But we don't think that's the best way to look at a treatment of a progressively declining organ. What we're trying to do is bring muscle back. So if we can bring muscle back in an older patient who has lost muscle, that could actually be more impactful for that particular individual than in a younger person where we slow the decline or we keep the status quo for longer. So this is all new ground and uncharted ground where we will have to work this out as we go. But conceptually, we think that we can make a significant impact on the lives of individuals, and that's what we're trying to do.
Could you explain what SET3247 is and how it works?
We've invented this drug after identifying the protein target. So once we've determined the biochemistry of what is going on and the particular target we wanted to interact with, then it becomes a matter of designing a chemical structure that fits into that particular protein. So all of these proteins have very, very intriguing three-dimensional shapes, and they all have pockets. These pockets often represent active sites, or they represent sites to avoid, and so on. So one is able to create three-dimensional models. One is able to use artificial intelligence tools to start mapping and looking at different ways to interact, and then designing chemical structures that are active and get into the sites of interest, get into those sites of interest in ways and in dimensions that you want. You don't want it to be too large. You don't want it to be too small. You don't want it sticking out in certain ways, and so on. You don't necessarily want it touching other members of a cascade of proteins that interact. So you take all of these things into consideration. It took us a considerable amount of time to work all these parameters out, test these compounds, test variants. You come up with multiple different scaffolds and work them all out. So we've done all of that work over the last 2-3 years in particular on this one target. And now we have a lead molecule that we've created to have specific properties, not just for interacting with the target, but also for how long it stays in the body and what safety profile we need for this population of patients. So we've tried to design something that we believe will be very, very mild in terms of side effects, and will have the efficacy that we need and the selectivity for the target of interest.
So where are you at with that journey through clinical trials?
So we are beyond excited right now because we are literally months away from beginning the journey of moving into human beings and testing our product. So we are completing now the final stages of our what is called our preclinical package of safety and toxicology and pharmacology and efficacy data in animal models and in vitro models. We will be putting a dossier together by the end of this quarter, the second quarter of 2024, to submit to regulators so that we can begin safety trials this year, which we plan to conduct and complete before the end of the year, so that then we can move into a patient population of Duchenne patients in 2025. So we're approximately a year from starting trials in Duchenne patients, and we're approximately 3 to 4 months from starting trials in healthy volunteers for safety purposes. And given it's a small molecule, this is the path that we need to follow with the regulators. A new chemical entity needs to be shown to be safe in humans before we can take it into a patient population.
What was the preclinical data like? I guess you presented some of that.
So we have studied our molecule quite extensively. We've done many different preclinical trials looking at the results in the MDX model, which is really the gold standard model. This is particularly apt for what we're trying to do because this model really it truly recapitulates the regeneration deficit that we believe to be the case in humans. And so what we show in our models consistently is that we can restore the ability of the stem cell to create new muscle cells that are called progenitor cells, and that those progenitor cells then divide further and create new muscle cells. And that muscle then restores functional capability and, in fact, increases functional capability. So we're able to show that we can increase the strength of these animals and start moving them back in the direction of being healthier. that we believe is the most important thing. If we can start to reverse the loss of muscle, add back muscle, and restore some strength, then individuals, regardless of where they are in the progression of this disease, may have benefit and may be able to continue to live the way they have been living or improve how they're living and what they're able to do. So we're just so excited about where we are in the process.
I would imagine that the community of people and families that suffer from the disease are also very excited about where you're at.
Well, it's a new approach. We do as much outreach as we are able. We have not wanted to oversell the possibilities too early and raise expectations and then disappoint. So we're still a little bit under the radar. We're becoming more known. We will be involved in June with Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy, providing a presentation at their June event in Orlando on our stage of development and what our plans are moving forward. We receive many unsolicited overtures and emails from families that I must say are heartbreaking for the most part. So, we want to do whatever we can to make a difference in the lives of individuals who are unimaginably brave, and we hope we can help them.
What do you think that the future looks like for those suffering with Duchenne? Do you think it's curable?
Cure is a very big word when it comes to an illness that's severe. I would say that what will happen, I believe, in my lifetime, and I'm now pushing 70, so I mean this sincerely, in my lifetime, is that we will have disease-modifying approaches, meaning that we can change the course of the disease. And I think that would be a remarkable step forward. I spent many years in the venture capital world in biotechnology during the 1990s and early 2000s, looking at the gene project to sequence the human genome and proteomics. And, back then we were going to cure cancer. Cure is a big word. So I'm more of the mind that if we can make serious, significant interventions into altering the course of a disease, that will change lives and extend lives. That, to me, is entirely possible in my lifetime for Duchenne. Our mission is to follow a different path, a path that we think can be rehabilitative to muscle, which we think would be of enormous benefit. And we are moving as fast as we possibly can to get this into people and determine its value for people.
So let's hope there's good news as soon as possible for all the Duchenne muscular dystrophy patients and their families as more treatments are developed. Don't forget to check out the latest news and articles over at Labiotech.eu, and I hope wherever in the world you are, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.